Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season premiere of The 100. A great premiere. So many interesting things went down about this episode that I really like. Everything, all the beef, everything that exists there, all the bad blood from season 5, it's like, oh, it's not like, oh, now that we're under these new circumstances, everything's forgiven. It's like, no. Everybody's still pissed at everybody because obviously Raven and Shaw, as well as and Maury and Murphy are giving Clark shit because of what she did, back on Earth and everything. And it's so interesting because obviously you have Echo and Bellamy kind of giving her more of a chance because they're like, at the end of the day, yes, she messed up. She really messed up. But at the end of the day, she did what was right in the end, and everything kind of ended up working out because she helped make sure of that. Because obviously, this is about doing what Monty and Harper wanted. Not everyone is awake. Only a select few people are awake right now and know the details about everything. Because obviously, they're going to try and not make the same mistakes that were made before. We interestingly find out, obviously, Aegis 3 apparently came here 200 years ago. So they've been on this planet that long, which is interesting. Makes you wonder, at what point did they finally give up and we're just stuck here? It's so interesting considering the fact is, obviously Earth kind of had a similar thing, but obviously it had a little bit of a different start because you had it kind of all starting with Rebecca to a certain extent. Not really, but obviously, she was kind of the beginning of everything, obviously being, like I said, just the beginning of kind of everything kind of playing out the way it kind of eventually did on Earth. It's actually kind of interesting because Shaw actually points out the fact is he actually knew, well, he didn't know her, but he actually met her once before they went on their mission. He met her once, which is interesting considering the fact is, and he even goes yeah, she was actually a lot like you, kind of talking to Raven, which kind of makes sense. Hence the whole Raven and Allie situation and just she had become obsessed with everything that was connected to Rebecca, so they were almost like kindred spirits in a way anyway, so it's almost very befitting that being the case. But then it comes the whole conversation who's going to go down to Earth? Because apparently there were 5 planets that Aegis 3 was looking at, and each planet they dropped off a group of people. This one ends up being the closest one, and most likely the one that is potentially the closest one to Earth, but even that's not a guarantee. What I actually thought was kind of fascinating that Jordan and Raven ended up finding out later on is that the planet they land on, Alpha, isn't actually a planet. It's actually a moon. It's if that's what the moon looks like and it's close to Earth, what the hell does the actual planet look like? Now, that's really interesting. You also can't forget about the fact is that, Raven and Shaw get together, which it's exciting at first. It's yeah, and then it kind of gets a little heartbreaking later on because everything that kind of comes out. I'm going to be all over the place, so I do apologize. But like I said, I like that aspect of the bad blood is not gone. For example, Abby's trying to get help, but Raven, it's fine, take my blood, do whatever. The fact of the matter is you tortured me. And Abby's the fact is I wasn't myself at the time. To be fair, it's thing of you understand why Abby kind of went down the path she did because of the whole cannibalism thing. She's the one that kind of made that whole thing happen. So she's the one that kind of put that all forth. So obviously that weighed heavy on her. So she drugged herself out. And then obviously she wasn't in the right state of mind dealing with everything that ended up coming about. So the fact is she was willing to do whatever it took because it's no, I need to get my drugs. I need to do whatever it takes. Hurting Raven like that, especially because, and Raven, because she was I'm not your mother, Raven. She's yeah, you're right. You're not. Because no matter how drunk or messed up my mom was, she never would have hurt me like you did. And because that's the sad thing, Abby and Raven were best of friends, especially back in season 1 when they teamed up and everything. I think Raven probably did look at her like a mother, and now that trust and that connection they have is broken because of what Abby did. And it's that's the thing, and that's a whole conversation Clark ends up having later on because Shaw was kind of giving her, shit about the fact of the matter is, we were given a second chance, let's not mess it up. But it's because everyone's kind of you're going to be the one to mess it up. Bellamy's on her side being just give them enough time, they'll come to real. Once again, it's the thing of yes, Clark fucked up big time last time. Yes, she's made mistakes, but if it wasn't for Clark has also done a lot of good. I mean, she's kind of the main reason why anyone has ever survived anything from the beginning of the series. You kind of forget what she's contributed to this group, all that she's done, all that she sacrificed and lost along the way as well. And she's kind of in this leadership position that is not a position anyone would probably want to be in, because it's just the hardest thing to deal with, you know? Because even Murphy started trying to throw her under the bus, but even Clark was like, "Are you serious, Murphy? Oh, you talking about me being like my fifth chance? What about you?" And he kind of takes offense to it. I'm like, you gotta admit, Murphy, you fucked up a lot too, and it's really hypocritical. But I guess for him, it's like, yeah. But I guess for him, it's like, I'm the lovable asshole. You don't get to play that card. I get to play that card. So I guess that's his justification in it. But for Shaw, it's a situation of, yeah, second chances come with faith, and the fact of the matter is, you don't instill any faith in anyone because of your past actions. You haven't done anything to prove to people that you're worth, like, that this second chance was not wasted on you, essentially, you know. And that's a heavy ass burden, because once again, it all stems back to why Clark did everything she did in the beginning. Why? Because she was a mother doing whatever it takes to protect her daughter. Something I feel like not a lot of people can, like, yeah, you can understand wanting to protect someone you love, but it's like, Clark and Maddie, that's a mother-daughter relationship. I think the only person that could understand that is Abby, you know, under the current circumstances. You know, look at the parents. The parents have done multiple, like, over the course of this series. Even Miller's dad, his dad sacrificed to make sure that he was one of the people from Sky Crew that survived back in season 4/5. You know, because like 100 people from every group, you know, so it's that situation of they make sacrifices to make sure they protect the people that they love, their children, you know, because they're the most important thing. It's the same thing. So, like I said, she messed up, but I always justify it as like she did what any mother would, you know. Hell, even that all kind of ties in with like the whole Miller situation, because Miller's like, he's like, you know, you really want to bring me along in this? And Bellamy's like, yeah, sure. He's like, I'm the one that threw you in the pit. He's like, no, that wasn't you. That was my sister. It's like, we're good. But obviously for Miller, it's still hard, because for him, it's like, no matter what the circumstances are, obviously he feels guilty, because I'm like, I'm here, even though I've done all those terrible things for all those years, you know, for the sake of Octavia, but also for the sake of survival, which Jackson is like, you did what you needed to survive. It's like, we did, but it's like, Jackson says that, but, you know, Miller's like, no, I did things. You just didn't stop things from happening. That's two very different things, you know, so that's kind of a lot to live with. I do like the perspective of it being like, holy crap, we are the aliens in this situation, which is kind of crazy to think about. And I mean, I guess you'll make the argument technically they were the aliens at the beginning of the series when they landed on Earth, the original 100, but the 100, and then there's everyone just from Sky Crew, you know, the Ark and everything. So it's like, it's something interesting to kind of think about. But this is kind of them being like full on true, you know, aliens in that regard. So I'll go ahead and talk about it. Sadly, you know, Shaw didn't make it through, but, you know, luckily, you know, Clark was trying to save him. Her being a Nightblood, though, radiation shield didn't affect her. Also, those bugs, which basically, like, they eat leaves. I guess, like, maybe there's something in the atmosphere or whatever. The plants are radiated in the sense that the moment they eat them, the bug life goes a little crazy. Is that something naturally that happened to them? Or they just naturally do that? Or was it, like, an adaptation type of situation of, like, the world changed, like, basically, like I said, the plants got irradiated or something, and now anytime they eat the leaves or what, they kind of go a little crazy like that. It's kind of interesting because it kind of ties in with the fact is of, like, using an example like the worms from last season, like, obviously, like, after Prime Fire happened, like, the worms that obviously played a role later on in season 5. It's so interesting, like, that wasn't something they had to deal with for a long time. I mean, to be fair, Clark kind of had to deal with it for, like, avoiding those things for years and stuff like that, being careful around them, but that's about it. It wasn't like something they had to continuously deal with the entire time, because that was a new development on Earth, you know, after Prime Fire, you know, in season 4's finale. So it's just kind of interesting to kind of think about that. So it's kind of like, oh, we're kind of starting off with that, because I feel like that didn't come up that often, like, especially catching like earlier bits of the original for earlier seasons. Like, the wildlife wasn't something that came up that often throughout. Like, earlier seasons, it played a bigger role, like, kind of like Earth's, like, radiated wildlife, but later on, I feel like it kind of disappeared a little bit. So I wonder, is that going to be them bringing that kind of back and more forward in the story of, like, that being a more prominent threat and continuous thing that they kind of have to potentially deal with. We'll ultimately have to wait and see in that regard. And then also you have the whole Murphy situation. Murphy, once again, being the asshole, had to be like, well, I don't want to be the one to kind of bear the bad news, but it's like, well, we just lost our pilot. And what about you, Clark? Don't you want to get back to Maddie? Pissing off Clark. And it's like, oh, what about you, Miller? Get back to your Red Queen, pissing him off. And it's like, yes, we all kind of make us feel better to beat the crap out of Murphy, but let's not. Murphy, I think for him, it's like, that's always his way to kind of handle things. Like when things kind of have him worried and stuff like that, he just can't help himself but have to push people's buttons. Legitimately, it's a defense mechanism. You can tell it's because I think at the end of the day, it's his way of dealing with the fact is that maybe he's scared and worried. He has to respond with sarcasm and just being a straight up asshole, so. Things also got complicated, on the ship and everything, because obviously they're trying to help out with Kane's situation, and Abby, her and Raven are butting heads to the point Raven was like, oh yeah, the fact of the matter is, here, take these pills. It'd probably be better off if you did just kind of relapse and ended up overdosing. Then everything can be fine again. It's like, Jesus, Raven. But to be fair, it's like, obviously she's super pissed and everything, and obviously Abby's trying to save Kane's life, which, hey, Kane wakes up and it's like, yo, Kane, look at this. And Kane's like, after everything we went through, it's been leading us to this. We get our second chance and everything. But it turns out Nyla woke up Octavia, which I shouldn't be too surprised by. Like, Nyla's kind of shown where her loyalty has lied before prior to this. And Octavia waking up, oh boy, did she rip into Kane, bringing up everything Kane's ever done of like, oh, the fact is you're a traitor. Literally brought up the thing from season 1 where he suggested that they kill those people on the Ark because they didn't know that the Earth was habitable yet. They lost contact with the kids on Earth and everything. So it's like, man, that's super shitty to kind of bring that up in reference. Then like the people that died on the battlefield, it's like, oh yeah, Ethan, he was the first one to get a bullet through the head. How would Jaha feel about that? Which I'll go ahead. I think I brought this up last season too. That's still kind of super messed up that Ethan didn't survive that. Especially because that was such a storyline with Jaha. But in the grand scheme of things, I was like, I almost thought that's what they were about to do with Kane. They were about to Jaha him. Because if you remember correctly, Jaha died basically episode 2 of season 5. I was like, Jesus, it's like we're at the beginning of the season and you killed off of one of the main characters like that. It just kind of, I didn't expect a death that early in the season. I thought like Kane's situation was going to happen like that. But I love Kane kind of twisting it around. It's like, you want to say everything you did was for the people. Because like, Octavia's like, oh yeah, I might be a monster, but you guys are monsters too. Referencing, Abby and Kane. And then Kane had to point out like, well, what about the fact is you like destroyed all those algae plants, you burned them? Remember all that stuff you did? That wasn't about like, trying to protect your people or survival. That was you claiming for power. The fact is you were lost and you're still lost, and she's even walking away while Kane's dying. She's not even trying to lift a hand to help, which kind of shows you. But Abby isn't willing to give up on Kane, so she puts him back on ice, and she ends up giving the pills back to Raven, and it's like, no more. And for her, she's dead set on saving a man that she loves. The fact of the matter is, for her, because she knows that Kane is like, I think in her mind, it's not only just the fact that she loves Kane. I think that's a big part of it, but it's also like, he's kind of like one of the best of them. Like Kane, like shifted a lot, like especially when they ended up, everyone from the Ark ended up coming to Earth. He changed the most. He was the one always pushing for like bridging the gaps between everything and everyone. He was the main one behind that. And once again, it's so interesting. I mean, this is the exact reason why they decided to leave Octavia behind, because it's like, oh, she's going to want war. Last thing we want is that, because we're only going to fire, because even Bellamy's like, we're going to make sure that we're the ones that only fire afterward. We're going to make sure they're the ones that fire first, So I just thought that was kind of fascinating. Not wanting to make that mistake again. Once again, it's like we learned everything we could from our experiences on Earth, and it's like we cannot bring this to a new planet, or we just, we cannot afford to repeat the cycle again. So that was some interesting drama. Like I said, it's still kind of crazy to think about. Only like a handful of people are awake, and once again, sadly, Raven still doesn't know about Shaw. It's like, man. To be fair, I let that slip my mind just now, like, because I brought it up earlier, but it's like, right, we did start off with a death in that. It's like, shit, they literally went through everything last season, and it's like, oh, Shaw survived everything just for him to die in the premiere, dude. It's like, Jesus, like, Raven can't find no damn happiness, because let's not forget, literally everyone Raven's ever loved has died. To be fair, the same thing kind of applies to everyone, because it definitely applies in the case of Clark, because she's lost everyone. Finn, Lexa. It's been a rough road for everyone, obviously. There was something, there was some pictures and stuff like that. We're saying, like, basically giving thanks to the Primes. I'm assuming that's supposed to be the original people from Allegiance 3, the ones that were sent on this mission. I'm assuming that's supposed to be, like, the great ancestors, kind of like Rebecca when it comes to, like, Tree Crew and just everyone else, you know, the rest of the Grounders, that type of situation. I'm sure it kind of spawns from that, obviously. Kind of in a similar thing. It is kind of interesting that it's on the flip side of things. Well, in many different regards, because it's like, before, obviously, like, Clark and Nim are part of this mission of investigating Earth. Before, it was kind of more of a, you don't really have much of a choice, you have to do this. Whereas this case, it's like them volunteering to do it. It's kind of like, it's kind of interesting to see, like, the similarities, yet changes. Also, they went down here by themselves. In this case, it was full-blown families that came down here on Allegiance 3. So that was kind of interesting. They end up finding all those different houses, but they're empty. It led to an interesting conversation between Clark and Bellamy. The whole conversation of, like, obviously the reminiscent thing of, like, the time skip between season 4 and season 5 of, like, oh yeah, she would, you know, be on the radio not knowing if they got her messages or not, which they never did in those 6 years, because Bellamy's trying to get in contact with Raven and it's not going through. But then it's the whole thing of, like, well, you know, she, even though she knew that maybe he wasn't getting the messages, she didn't care, because for her it still made her feel okay. It still made her feel connected, you know. So I thought that was kind of nice. It's kind of another thing too that ends up coming up, because obviously it's the whole conversation of, like, you're gonna have to forgive Octavia, and, you know, obviously Bellamy still has reservations about it, but it's like, the fact of the matter is, you know, giving people a chance to kind of grow. Like, the fact of the matter is to kind of make up for their mistakes. Like, because she kind of uses her and Bellamy, for example. It's like, look where we are now. We weren't like this before, but given enough time and given the opportunity, we were able to kind of change things between us. So, like, give your sister time, you know, because she did what she needed to survive. So, we'll see. It's definitely going to be interesting to see how this whole, like, how everything plays out for Octavia this season, because it feels like she's still holding on to a lot of that Red Queen stuff, you know, so we'll see. But things take an interesting turn, because it's, once again, it's that whole thing of, like, the environment is already attacking them immediately. It's kind of interesting because obviously, like, the mountain people, the people from Mount Weather, obviously there's the whole radiation situation for them. So obviously, like, Sky Crew came in there being, you know, and obviously them and the Grounders are like, oh, we're not affected by the radiation. Now it seems like they've come here and they're immediately affected by whatever's going on this planet, because it seems like the red sun kind of does something to people. Because Amori was looking through a hole or something, and she was kind of looking at it and was just kind of getting like, ugh. It's like, what's going on? It seems like it drives you crazy. I guess it's something that is released from it into the atmosphere, because that's why the village or whatever is empty, because they know around this time you need to get away. They need to find somewhere else to be. It's like, how do you get away from there? I don't know. What's interesting though is that the ship ends up getting taken off. Like, was that in there? I doubt. I was like, is that them tripping? Like, I thought that might have been something like maybe they were hallucinating or something like that. That's what I was thinking. Like, it was starting to set in. It's like, no. It's sad too, because Murphy was doing his thing, playing music and kind of singing and stuff like that, and everyone was kind of enjoying the show until Amari ended up snapping and started almost attacking and killing him. So there's that. You know, it's interesting because Murphy kind of reminds me of Jasper, because Jasper was kind of the one jumping forward, like when they first got to Earth. So I guess it's supposed to be a little bit of a wink and nod to that, potentially kind of reminiscent of that. But it seems like basically, I guess something is in the air that's going to drive them all crazy. I'm curious, is Clark going to be immune to it because of the whole Nightblood situation? It's something I didn't even think about. It's like, man, that's probably going to come in big handy for her and Maddie going forward. Like, them being Nightblood's probably going to give them like a big advantage or immunity. It's definitely going to be interesting. I did remember seeing I can't remember. I feel like I might have seen the trailer for this. Or at least I saw images. I don't know if I actually sat down and watched the trailer. I don't remember. I think I did. There's definitely a certain someone that I saw pop up in the trailer, so I was like, oh, I'll get to that soon enough when that person pops up. But it's definitely, I'm very excited to have the 100 back, especially this new experience on an alien planet. Well, obviously, moon. Which also begs the question, once again, does this have to do with the fact, because they are on a moon, does that mean that's how they got away from it, is by going to the actual planet? Like, does their ship still work and stuff like that? Because once again, they've been there for like 200 years. I mean, I guess it's not like they could really get any help or anything, but still. Because there's no getting a signal to Alpha or getting it a signal off of Alpha, hence why the radio is not working right now anyway, but still. It's definitely going to be very interesting to see what the next episode has in store for us. Because like I said, this is just the drama that's created with just a few people awake, and also the whole aspect of like, oh, you kind of have to fight for your survival on the planet almost immediately again. Because, well, of course you'd have to, but it's just kind of interesting because, like I said, it's similar circumstances to how Earth was in its final days during Season 5. You see that the Earth kind of reflected that, and now, like, Planet Alpha's kind of like that right off the start to a certain extent, so it's interesting in that case. But obviously, like, not everyone is away. Once everyone gets away, I'm sure there's going to be even more stuff going down, but ultimately, we're going to have to wait to see, and I'm so excited to see what the next episode has in store for us. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.